Good afternoon. My talk is in no way coincidental to Ian's panel called Knock Knock Identities here. We didn't collaborate. The title of my talk comes from a joke that my 8-year-old son told me a while back that goes, knock knock, who's there? Interrupting cow, interrupt moo. So I thought it was appropriate for the interrupting fraudster. My name's Rob Davis. I'm the director of the Digital Identity Services team at TIAA. I have about 22 years in the identity field. I started at a large telco in Canada, working on their first intranet systems, and ended up in info security, cybersecurity, and then for the last 4 years have actually been on the digital transformation side. So my talk's going to be a little bit different spin on customer identity and access management from the digital transformation side. So I hope that is something you're interested in. Obviously, the disclaimer, you can believe me or not, it's up to you. I think I know what I'm talking about, but always up for a debate. So let's get right into it. Again, digital transformation is where we've been spending most of our time in the customer identity and access management space. This was something that I found came out of our larger organization as sort of a mission. So as companies undertake their unique journeys into digital transformation, Customer IAM has become a key ingredient to success right out of the starting gate. And I think that resonates with us in the, being from a 100-year-old company. We started with paper. We're still working with paper. So to transform digitally is monumental. And customer identity and access management to reduce friction, reduce paper, you got to get it right. Otherwise, without that viable IAM strategy, your customers are going to look elsewhere because you're not the only game in town. We're not the only game in town. Our chief digital officer put a picture of Times Square up on the board with every advertisement you can possibly think of, and that's what you're competing with. You're competing with digital space. So your customers' identities have to fit somewhere within that space. So I thought that the mission was relevant. So again, with the key ingredients, a customer IAM program must be able to deliver the 4 key elements. Number 1, identity lifecycle. Janelle talked a lot about this in hers. From identity creation to verification and use to maintenance, revocation, and removal. Right? When you're done, or when the identity's done, get rid of it. It just takes up space, and there is a possible vector for an attack. The second is a contextual authentication and authorization element. Understanding who your customers are and their behaviors will help you understand or define their context and the authentication that they need and the authorization that they require to do business with you. Next, the fraud monitoring and alerting. When do you raise a red flag and when you send in the reinforcements? Very important nowadays. Fraud, you've probably heard a number of other talks. Fraud incidents are on the rise. Identities are being compromised in the hundreds of millions. And then finally, the digital customer experience. So giving your customers the best of your company and products across all digital touch points and contact opportunities. The lower friction, it was mentioned this morning in the keynotes, seamless identity, seamless security, passive identity, passive monitoring, but still security is there. All right, so identity lifecycle. There's a theme of the pictures, by the way. So the first one in identity creation is the appropriate collection of information from an individual. And that's by industry or by country or geographic region. by channel and by platform. Sometimes you can't collect information from different types of channels. Obviously, you're not going to collect a mobile device information from someone who's calling your call center. The next one, verification and use. This one's a hard one. The confirmation or proof that the collected information is correct and accurate. That speaks to identity proofing, identity verification, or even device and proofing and device verification. The next is maintenance. Access changes, profile updates, and payment or account details. Very important. You can't enable any of those transactions until you have confirmation that the identity is the right identity, that they say that they are who they are. And then, of course, revocation and removal. Conditions triggering the restriction of access and the elimination of the identity. And you need to be able to do that. Sometimes it's important at least to revoke access when you are in the middle of a fraud case or a fraud incident to stop the madness. So the next one, contextual authentication and authorization. Again, this is fairly common across a lot of topics. You look for device attributes and behavioral attributes. A number of products using AI, machine learning, can do device fingerprinting with a whole host of attributes within the fingerprint. The IP reputation, demographics, geolocation, geofencing, velocity, identity reputation, and historical activity all take into account your context. And of course, behavioral attributes, keystrokes, mouse movements, gesture, and motion are playing a bigger part now in understanding that the identity is real. I've been fortunate to be working with, I'm not integrated into, but working with our enterprise financial crimes, our fraud team. So this has now become one of our biggest, I would say, our biggest sponsors of projects within our organization in the identity space, so fraud monitoring and alerting. They're very interested in reviewing the fraud risk results, and they're reviewing those with the analytics lens, identifying high-risk functions and anomalies, the use of data scientists in this space, but constantly evaluating the effectiveness of the monitoring rules, and they perform those regular reviews. Benchmarking the analytics and their procedures used in the current monitoring and the latest techniques and technology on the market. That's where I get to play with the new tools. And then assess the extent of data integrated across the originating business lines, the products and their applications. Every data point, every system, every source has data to use in terms of fraud monitoring and alerting, and it's used for inspection. So again, within fraud monitoring and alerting, the questions that the investigators ask and act upon, standard questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I hope you can see the writing. It's pretty small, but all of the elements in the who, what, where, when, why, and how are used for fraud monitoring and alerting. And then finally, the digital customer experience. So what makes a great digital customer experience? Obviously, you don't want them logging in on every page. You want the lowest friction possible with the highest security reasonable. So loyalty is one with consistency. We understand that as we transform digitally. It also requires consistent internal technology, practices, and processes across your organization. One organization can't implement a digital process or a practice and another one do it something different. Your customers will get confused. And the visual consistency matters. Your reputation is won by consistent login. Many companies who have a consistent login, their login page, their forms they look the same, they act the same, they behave the same. And then the tools and services that collect the customer opinion to improve the digital customer experience over time is very important. I get opinions from our customers, polarized opinions from our customers every single day. And we read them all. And our customers, the people that interact with us, our B2Bs, our B2Cs, they have a wide range of opinions. How secure they want to be, how secure they don't want to be. Some requests are almost impossible. Some requests are somewhat ridiculous. But their opinion matters. And then digital initiatives should complement the customer journey. So those are new controls, new authenticators, meet the customer where they are. Use the social media platforms, use their devices to reduce the friction, reduce their seemingly high friction controls that you want to impose. All right, so identity, context, monitoring, and the experience. Now what? I promised some examples. So in the fraud space, I'll explain what we're looking at here. We're focusing on the attention of and effort on the transactions. Where you have the best ability to prevent fraudulent transactions is at entry. 75% where you want to prevent most of your fraudsters from gaining access. If you do catch them at entry, you're preventing their access to your system. The next one is 15% of those transactions at the request, at the second level. If those actors are in that lane, then you are detecting bad behavior. You're detecting fraudulent behavior. And then the last one is, and of course you're getting towards the target, 10% at the fulfillment layer, where the fraudster or the actor has requested a money transfer from or a transaction that they should not have, and at that layer you're forced to respond to your customer impacted. So the focus of attention and effort on transactions, the biggest bang for the buck is obviously at entry, 75%. That's where you should be catching most of those transactions with the technologies that are available today. So a little different spin. So fraud monitoring activities, you can see that. So in the prevent, detect, and respond theme, when you're preventing fraud, you're educating and raising awareness. You're doing environmental surveillance, strong authentication, capturing intelligence, and of course continuous monitoring. In the second lane, when you're detecting, you're doing transactional review. That's also constant. You're doing behavior analysis in the detection. You're doing link analysis, the relationship analysis of data. Of course, investigating the alerts and alerting the customer, which is not always a pleasant experience. And then, of course, responding, the real-time interdiction, the transaction risk routing. You need to make sure that you're making sure that your customers, again, are notified, that law enforcement may be notified, that your business is notified. You're looking at customer verification. Maybe it is the customer, and maybe you're putting them through hoops that you shouldn't be, but making sure that they're actually behind the scenes and then doing those verifications. Investigative feedback and improving your logic. Obviously, you're going to be reiterating those controls. So the logic of response and then funneling that back into the prevent, detect, and respond mechanisms are important. So I'll talk a little bit about the prevent and detect with the next slide in our view of sort of contextual authentication and authorization in practice. And we're looking into decision systems from a digital transformation perspective. So this is more of a customer experience perspective. So to give you a view of the data that we're funneling in from different channels to reduce friction, to increase the customer experience. So we're dealing with a number of channels on the left, starting with the web. It's probably the biggest, mobile second, and the Internet of Things. I lump them together. They're not necessarily the same. The next is the integrated voice response systems, the automated phone systems, and then obviously the phone call or the call centers. So those are the channels that are generating session activity. Each channel comes with it different channel risk indicators. In the web channel, you're going to have devices. In the mobile channel, you'll have devices. You might have geolocation, geofencing, geovelocity, so geostar, whatever geo you want to, the Neo Geo, doesn't matter. In the phone channel, you might have an ANI, it's automated number. You also, in the mobile channel, could have carrier data that you could look up. In a number of different channels, either phone, IVR, most of the channels you could make use of biometrics. Behavioral analytics is becoming big right now, big in the workforce space, and there's a lot of companies that are looking in the enterprise or customer space as well. We have a number of products that provide us phone line noise analytics to detect known bad phone lines. These are a different take on sort of your device analytics. These are for line noise for phones. And of course, historical data. Once you've gathered your decisions, once you take your monitoring, you want to store that into a repository for use within the decisioning system. Then you have your risk output, and the risk output basically follows along from the channel risk indicators. You're going to take all of that information and you're going to apply it to a decision matrix. This is your rules engine, very similar to how a risk engine might step you up, looking at different characteristics. Our decision platform takes a customer experience view, and I'll explain that in a second. Obviously, the decision matrix has low, medium, and high risk outputs based on the critical key factors. They could be weighted depending on how you weight some of your channel risk systems. Now, why make the distinction that the decision platform is a customer experience decision system is because your channel risk indicators, your channel risk engines, if you will, those ones that are providing the risk output, have their own opinions of how your device or your event has occurred. One risk system might say, the score is so high based on my criteria that you should block access. One might say that the score is so low that you can let them have access. Depending on your customer experience, in some cases, companies that don't want to impose that much high friction, they are willing to take the risk of that risk engine answer of block the user from access. They're saying, no, let's do this instead. That's a customer experience decision. That's a risk decision. So your enterprise risk teams will say, in these cases, let this person in instead. So that's why I call the decision platform a customer experience platform. But finally, in the prevent and detect section, the difference between preventing and detecting, while you're preventing access and detecting access, or preventing transactions, fraudulent transactions, and detecting them, is the difference between looking at the dialog on the street versus looking at the dialog as he's coming through your front door. For those of you who don't know what dialog is, watch the BBC. Your fraudster is best detected out on the street. Your fraudster is best not detected, like the previous slides for detection, when they're in your system mucking around. All right? All right, that's it. Any questions? There's a microphone. That's all. Yeah. Do we have time? Oh, yeah.
Oh, thanks. So, whoop, set on the wrong side of the chair. Does anyone have anything that they want to talk about with the security or fraud side of customer management? Yes.
Can you share at what point you enforce a lot of your fraud prevention? Is it authentication time typically, or is it granular at like an API level to enforce at the transaction level once they're inside the application?
So we do both. During authentication, I wouldn't say that we are there fully context. This is what we're working on. It's fairly new in the space, but we do have authentication controls as well as back-end monitoring controls. Yeah, every system generates data. That data is analyzed by our investigators.
Any other questions? Okay, any use cases or scenarios you guys want to talk about around customer management? Oh, yes.
So I have a question that when you have multiple websites and they have separate repositories, but one day some executive decided that, no, we want to be able to let people go seamlessly from one to the other, and there's 0 identified factors across the websites. Have you guys come across tips and tricks for data analysis and things like that?
So to make sure I think that we're understanding, or I'm understanding the question, so you have, is this on the customer side? Okay, and so we're wanting,
Self-registration.
yeah.
One side, but the other side is larger customers, so it's more contract commercial business.
Okay,
But they want to be able to have the customers seamlessly go from one to the other and be able to get pricing based on certain attributes.
so you could have like a front-end portal that allows them to access both of the different types of services, both of the different types of sites, for example. If you don't have like an identifier that says Joe Smith in application A is the same Joe Smith as in application B, that does certainly make things more difficult. We can investigate, and this is actually something that I think I deal with all the time with implementing IAM solutions, whether it's with customer IAM or with internal IAM. And it's a difficult problem to solve because you want them to be able to access their records and their data and not a different Joe Smith's records and data. It would be pretty complicated from a customer standpoint, but we can analyze those applications or the websites to see are there attributes that we could utilize? Could we do a combination of first name plus last name plus email address? Are we not capturing the email address in one of the applications? That's a pretty common thing not to capture, especially on systems that are older. Are we capturing the name of the company? And maybe we could narrow it down like that, and maybe there's less opportunities for 2 Joe Smiths within that same company. And if we did identify the wrong customer, at least it's within that company's context and not a different company's context. We could do, like IP at where are they coming from? If we know that they're accessing from a device within the company, your customer's company's network, we could potentially narrow it down that way. We could take our application that maybe we have one application that has better data in it and one application that doesn't have very much data. We can analyze, is there an unused attribute field that we could push that information to and work with like delegated admin type folks at our customer business's site, and they can help us identify, okay, out of the 3 Joe Smiths at our company, this is the right one, this is the other one, this is the other one. And then we could update that unused attribute field to capture a unique identifier like their email address or something else that could help tie.
That's pretty, yeah. I think in our case anyway, we, our B2B, our larger institutions, and our B2C are the employees of those institutions working with our website, our external sites, and our resources. So we do have a similar challenge, I think. We try to streamline the process into the B2C, but also, and right now it's kind of a separate B2B portal. So I'd like to see a more unified identity across the organization.
Yeah, it's actually something that's very complex at universities also. So we have a lot of university customers where we're going in and it's not necessarily that they need to access a bunch of different applications and we don't know who that one student is in all of those applications because they have like a student ID or something, but it's that their relationship could be multifaceted with universities. So they could be a student, but they could also be faculty, and they could also be like a adjunct professor or something, all at the same time. They could work in an office job and teach something on Fridays and be a student working on their PhD. And universities often have completely disparate authoritative sources for all of those different user types. And managing that and understanding that Joe Bob, the student, is the same guy as Joe Bob, the teacher, is the same guy as Joe Bob that works in the IT team, is extremely difficult to do. And we deal with those complicated use cases a lot and trying to add those identifiers and attributes.
And with the universities, we know that some of those identities actually go out to other universities.
For sure. Yep, for sure. Good question. Any other topics or things that y'all would like to talk about around customer management? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for attending, and hopefully this was informative, and thanks very much for your talk.